Okay, so let's talk about these cover tunes. Yeah, these cover tunes. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is another episode of Preach. And before we get into the topic for today, I would like you to go ahead and like and subscribe as well as share. We are getting close to 300 subscribers, so the channel is growing. I'm glad to know that just because that lets me know that the content that we're making here, it's actually helping people out there. So once again, if this content is something for you, or if it's for somebody that you may be knowing that, are going through some things and being a creative, please feel free, like I said, to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you can I can let you know when I'm be up on here. Before I go on to, guys, I got these new glasses. Please tell me what you think down in the comments if you like them. I was looking for a new pair. I still like my red ones, of course. But I figured I would switch it up and give this, refresh my face. You feel me? So let's talk about the topic for today. The topic for today is going to be cover tunes. Now, of course, as always, I have to share, a little backstory about cover tunes as it proceeds as it basically pertains to myself. Now, a lot of people who are going to view this episode are going to think that maybe I have some kind of issue with cover tunes, and I don't have an issue with cover tunes. I just think that in the broad sense of what cover tunes are, that you're doing yourself a very tremendous disservice by just doing that when you were obviously given a gift to be creative and to do something original in the world, in the universe. So, I don't want what my comments are about cover tunes to offend anyone, because I think that when I first started going on my tirade about cover tunes, I might have hurt some people's feelings. And if I did that, then I'm sorry, because I'm not trying to hurt your feelings if that's your niche for right now. But I just want you to understand that there's an inner artist inside of you that needs to render the world your original creations. We're all supposed to be inspired by the past, right? We're supposed to be inspired by, what kind of music or things we were doing at the time. Okay, so let me start with my story to go into what we're talking about. So, number one, I had pretty much done cover tunes. All of your favorites, Valerie, anything by Bruno Mars, Michael Jackson, Say It Loud. I even did a tour for the Michael Jackson tribute tour back in 2009, 2010, when I was living in Orlando, Florida, which was a cover show, but it was a cover show that, you're being paid to basically do almost like a stage performance, almost like a musical, I wouldn't dare say like a Broadway musical, but I would say musical because the set and everything for that was very elaborate sets. You have to rehearse in a huge like movie set kind of environment where, there's a stage and all the backline and stuff is set up to kind of go through that. I feel like that was a different situation. Does it still classified as a cover tune gig? Yes. But it was a cover tune gig at, I would say, the greatest potential, with the greatest amount of bang for the buck to get paid good money and to travel and have expenses paid for. My other example of this is I once was asked to come audition for a casino in Biloxi, Mississippi. And it was basically a cover tune situation too, where I would be doing a lot of cover tunes, anything from, all different genres, rock and roll, Latin, pop, R&B. It was a big bag of different tunes. They had like a master set list of 250 songs. In my experiences doing cruises, cruise lines, both for Carnival Cruise Line and Royal Caribbean, same thing. Set lists, sometimes you go in order, sometimes you don't, try to mix it up. But for the most part, those were cover tune gigs at their highest level, where you're getting the most bang for your buck. You're getting paid pretty good money to do cover tunes and to be entertaining. But I got to a point where even out of all the sideman things that I've done, and I've done blues, I've done every major genre you could think of. I've done blues, I've done jazz, lots of jazz, lots of funk, lots of Latin, lots of a little bit of everything. But I started realizing, as I got into, I first got my production with ASCAP. If you're not familiar with a publishing company, ASCAP, there's BMI, there's also SESAC. And I remember when I was a younger musician coming up that there was issues with playing certain people's songs at certain venues, because if that song wasn't on the list, or if it was on the list, then there would be a payment that would basically have to be reported to either SESAC, BMI, or ASCAP, because that meant that it had to be reported that song was played at that venue, so that the artist could collect, basically a credit for that song being played. Even though it's not the radio, it works kind of like the radio. And if that establishment, if I'm not mistaken, if the establishment was not under, if the song that you were doing was not under the umbrella of, like let's say you're playing at a local venue, and that local venue is backed by ASCAP, then of course ASCAP as a publishing company has hundreds of songs that are in that. A lot of them, which include some of your very favorite covers, could be covered because technically it's okay. But then there were other places that would say, well, you can't cover these songs because, they are not covered by the publisher. So I started realizing that this was a thing, and that, when you play songs out, and if they reported on those songs, sometimes people were very good at them. And I would say most of the local venues in Western New York are not good about keeping up with that kind of stuff. But you get to places like New York City, major city outlets, Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, as I stated, Atlanta, so their owners are mandated to keep track and record, especially if it's like a venue that receives big line artists all the time, especially if that venue receives the artist that is also within that publishing. That's like Michael Jackson showing up to a venue. He performs Rock With You, right? And then maybe 5 weeks later somebody else comes through and does Rock With You. It was like I was starting to realize, wow, so the artist is going to, even though you're paying the cover fee to get into these places, the artist is still going to benefit off of that music 9 times out of 10. And meanwhile, you're actually doing a form of, I wouldn't call it plagiarism, but you're copying, and that's going to irritate a lot of people. And now, of course, that's why it's called a cover band, because you're doing cover songs, and once again, like I said in the beginning, I already apologized. Don't y'all get mad at me. Don't you come for me in the comments, because I'm going to come back. But what I am saying is, once again, I started seeing these things, and then I came back to Buffalo. Was figuring that I was just going to settle into the local scene and kind of, ride off into the sunset in Buffalo, just kind of doing local scene stuff and staying low. at the time, given my particular set of circumstances. My father had passed away and my mom needed my help, and it just looks like I wasn't going to have enough space and time to not take care of my family, which means it was going to limit me to traveling like I was doing prior to coming home. So that eventually changed for me. But when I first came back home and I was looking to do a cover band, it was at a local venue in the North Buffalo area. And we were doing a lot of neo-soul tunes. And I thought that was the vein that I wanted to operate in, instead of doing your average casual cover tunes. At least so I thought was average casual. So we were doing a lot of stuff like Jill Scott and, Erykah Badu and a lot of singer-songwriters of neo-soul. So that was great. But, then I started noticing that when I would go to other places around town, that the same arrangements that certain people were doing for the same song was the same ones that people were doing on the other side of town too. Then you go to another venue and you see that they're also doing the same arrangement. And it's not quite the original arrangement, but it's like certain hits and stuff that one group of people already did. The other group just copied because they thought it was sweet. And it became the standard of what you would do there. So if you went to somebody else's gig and went to go play that song and you didn't hit those hits, that, mind you, were not in the original song to begin with, people will look at you like you suck because you didn't hit the hits that they normally would have hit, because the hits had basically been placed there. And I started realizing, I said, yo, this is a sickness. This is not fair, and it's not good either. But then when I watched the reaction of the crowd over the years, I'm like, yo, they really go crazy for these same tunes over and over and over again. Ain't No Sunshine, Sex Machine. And I'm going to tell you a little fun fact about Sex Machine as well. But it was like, there's so many other songs to even cover. This is why I'm not totally fighting cover tunes, because there's other versions of cover tunes that people just totally forget that they never touch. But it was like everybody had gotten to this complacency of doing the same tunes over and over and over again. And that was annoying to me, because I came from a very heavy jazz background, where I'm used to kind of improvising right on the spot. Jazz is a complete improv within itself. It's an improv genre. And, so you never could play a jazz tune one way the same time all the time anyway. Unless you really are studying what's going on in Donna Lee. Somebody else may play Donna Lee in the sax solo, and they're completely different. Somebody's going to play Blue Train differently than Coltrane, except for the head. Then I started realizing that the jazz places that I was hanging out were doing the same thing. Then I started understanding that gospel was doing the same thing at church. You're doing cover tunes at church. And people might say, well, that's church, that's different. I'm like, no, it's not. I realized that some of the praise and worship songs that were being done at church were basically the same. Like, how many times can you do Lord, You Are Good? How many times can you do We're Blessed in the City? I mean, Fred Hammond and Blessed in the City came out in 1999. I just was like, yo, they're doing the same. It's worse than gospel. It's like twice worse than it normally is. So I said, I'm frustrated. So I stopped doing cover stuff altogether. And that was probably around 2014, 2015. I say 2014. I joined a more jazz improvisational group, more like a fusion jazz project. And I would do some cover stuff every now and then to quote unquote put some money in my pocket. And I'm going to talk about why that quote unquote means something as well. But I made the most money in my career playing original music. The most. And it just made me say, yo, this lie that's been told to people that you have to make, that's the bread and butter money. I'm like, yeah, no. because the promoters and the local promoters of this city, as well as other ones, they don't usually put out a budget to a cover band. That's like, they don't really care about the cover band artists as musicians, because they see this the same way as just an opportunity for them to have a chance to have live music at their venue to entertain their patrons. So, instead of just hiring a DJ or get a jukebox, it's different when it's a live band. But then you get a lot of disrespectful things that happen when you have a live band in such a touchable situation. What I mean by that is, you're doing a cover tune next, somebody could just come up on your stage and grab the mic and say, let's do Freebird. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, you wouldn't go to somebody else's live show, if you're paying a little bit more money so you can get up on stage, because by the time you attempted to, security would tackle your butt right down on the ground. Why is it that you feel like you could get so drunk and do it at the bar up the street? What is there a lack of respect that would make you think you could do that at a smaller place or a venue that's not charging as much money as, say, Herbie Hancock coming to town, Jay-Z, even a C-Line artist, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do that stuff there. So what makes you think you could do it at this local spots that allow you to, or that would try to let you do it, allow it, I would say. So I started to ponder these things, and that's when I also was getting to writing the first writings. I had some writings already, but that's when I was basically saying, you know what, I'm going to do my own project, and I'm going to also hit people in the head, because a lot of people didn't know I sing. So I'm going to go ahead and dust that off too, because people had started to one-dimensionalize me as just a drummer and didn't know I did other things. Like, I told people I played percussion, and as much as they knew me for being a drummer, they completely you play percussion too? Like it was a revelation. I'm like, yeah, I do. I was like, yo, that's crazy. Like, people only know you to do that one thing. There's some other artists in Buffalo. I'm not going to shout them out, only because I don't want to put them on the spot, but they do other things. I know a person that plays trumpet, but he also is a rapper. And, I feel like people was trying to diss him for rapping because he was such a good trumpet player that when he started rapping, it threw people off, and they was like, why is he doing that? And it's like saying, well, why can't you try something else? Just because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Now, one of my friends that I can mention, I'm going to give a shout out to Anthony Dial. I don't know what kind of bass name he has now, but I used to know him as A+. He used to play up here in the Buffalo music scene. He's a bassist and a sax player. Now, I never knew him as a bass player. I knew him as a saxophone player. So, and he was such a good saxophone player that when he played bass, even I kind of raised my eyebrow, because I'm like, well, what would make you want to get into bass, from sax, but it was really more or less a lot of, just wanting to stretch out and try something else. Never thought twice about it. He dove into bass, and he was actually good at it. And now he's phenomenal at bass even. So but a lot of people wasn't trying to give him his respect, because there were once again, being that one-dimensionalizing, vision that says you can only do this, and that's it. So I guess by the time I started my own thing, and realized that even the cover tunes that I was picking was still upsetting the masses. I was doing stuff like Gil Scott-Heron, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." And there's a second verse in there that says, there will be no more shooting out brothers on the instant replay. There'll be no more shooting out brothers on the instant replay. Y'all know what it is. I can't get demonetized out here. But it's a derogatory name for police, right? And next thing I know, 3 tables of a certain group of people got up and walked away and was all disgusted, very verbally and visually kind of showing their displeasure of me doing that song. I was also doing James Brown, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." I was on my social justice. I was doing The Optimistic, you can win as long as you keep your head to the sky. I was doing that kind of stuff. I was doing, just these really powerful black influencing songs because I felt like, okay, well, I could just do Sex Machine and Take You to the Bridge all day long. But now getting back to a point that I said earlier was that Sex Machine is 50, if not 50 plus years old, is Sex Machine. Came out in 1972, something like that. And I could be wrong about my dates, but it's about 50 years old. And what I realized about the greats is that they were making all this music not only because it was popular to do at that time, but they did it so they could leave a blueprint for the next generation to take it to a different place, so the culture could evolve. And, that style, of course, changed. R&B is not the R&B. The R&B of yesterday is not the R&B of today. The pop of yesterday is not the pop of today. Jazz is not the same jazz, unless you're a purist and you just want to hear swing or bebop or higher bop. Like, it's not the same today. Sometimes I hear people say jazz for certain things. I'm like, that's not jazz really, but people relate it to jazz, right? So, with music vastly changing and even how we consume music has changed, I wanted to make sure that I created something that would push the needle in the culture, because when you go back to talking about the Gil Scott-Herons and the Curtis Mayfields, they were really music makers. Like, they would produce the song, create and write the song, right all in the studio, like right there. Everybody's in the same room. They were creating. Times have changed, right? I was in a unique position because I was born in a time where you could see tape, reel to reel, ADAT, floppy disk. What else? Now everything's digital. So I went from seeing analog to digital. I see the changeover. What is my point, right? My point is, don't be afraid to be you. I always refer to music because that's the first creative outlet I know, but there are other creatives. Don't go with what the masses tell you need to do. And if you're a cover tune artist, don't be offended by what I'm saying, because you think that if this expression goes, if a hit dog will holler, I'm not coming at anybody. I just feel like we are all too unique of human beings born into this universe. That's now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's officially at 8 billion people, to not be original and do your own thing. Do you. Don't worry about what you is. Find out what you is. Go find you. And then carve your own lane. And guess what? Everybody's not going to follow in your lane at first, because they're going to be like, what are they doing? Because it's not the average usual, right? It's not the common space of what everybody else does. But that's right. Be the leader. Be the leader and create your own thing, and then watch. Everybody will follow what you're doing, because it's not the same. And then all of a sudden you might have created a new genre of music. You might have created a new style. Whatever you did, you put that effort forward to make that, and you have to go into that journey alone. You're not going to go into that journey and have everybody down with you. Trust me, even those who are your real friends, they're going to look at you kind of funny. But eventually it's going to catch on, especially if it's good. It's going to catch on. And people going to be like, yo, did you hear that? Yo, you heard that group? You heard that band? You heard that person singing? Did you see that drawing? Did you see that piece of video production? Did you see that photographer? Any creative, did you hear that poem? Be different and dare to be different. And like I said, that's a lonely road to travel. Just know that. And especially if you're a person dealing with anxiety, depression, and other things, it will be a dark, lonely place. But get a grip if you can. Try your best to get a grip. Put your head down and keep and just keep pressing on. Keep pressing on. Don't worry about what everybody is saying, because people gonna talk, but you got art to make, and the future of the next art is in your hands right now. Once again, I hope I have said something to inspire you and to help you find your journey in this big world of foolishness. I am glad that you can join me for these episodes and many more episodes. Like I said before, if you have any suggestions for things that you would like to talk about here on Preach, or that you would like me to cover, feel free. Drop them in the comments. I do see the likes. I have seen some of the private messages as well. Thank you. And I appreciate it. We have some dialogue like this going on. It would be my pleasure to discuss these kind of things on this platform. Once again, like, subscribe, share. Always be kind to one another. Kind people should be your kind of people. Amani Nine Wanga. And y'all have a great day. Peace.